Hello and welcome to the the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I am Bill Oram, joined, as always, by Brenna Greene. Brenna, welcome home from Corvallis.
Oh, thank you.
You and I spent quite a bit of time in and around Goss Stadium this weekend. I think you were there on Saturday and Sunday. I was there on Friday and Sunday.
I was just there Sunday.
You were just there Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
I was there Friday and Sunday for the stunning Game 1 comeback against Florida State and the trouncing that was Sunday against Florida State. And the Beavers, the number 8 seed team in all the land, is on their way to the College World Series yet again for the first time since 2018. First time under Mitch Canham, quieting the haters. Brenna.
There were a few of them.
Mitch Canham has haters, or had, probably still has, which I find to be amusing, given his consistency. I think, obviously the glass ceiling of taking a team to Omaha, that's the expectation in Corvallis, and now he's done that. By the way, with a team, and we can get into this, that I think has a real shot at this thing.
Yeah.
But let's start with the weekend that was. How was your Corvallis experience? How was your Game 3 rubber match experience in the heat at Goss Stadium?
I mean, do we want to get into how the meat is made in my line of business?
Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, normally my experience in the past anyways when it comes to trips is that, normally you kind of have to plan things out, and in this situation, it all just kind of fell into my lap out of nowhere. There was a brief conversation about me going to Omaha on Wednesday that I was not a part of, that I, got relayed to me, which is fine. And, but the vibe was very much like, nah, we'll see. It was very much like, I think there's probably like a 70% chance, 80% chance you're not going to be there. And then,
that's still a better chance than the Beavers had of winning Game 1 going into the 9th inning, but I digress.
Fair. So, yeah, I got a text at like 8:15 being like, hey, it's been approved, you're going. And so I, in the middle of about the 6th inning, booked my flight to Omaha.
Any trepidation as Florida State started climbing back and the Beavers' bats went a little bit cold and their 14-4 lead turned into a 14-7 lead, turned into a 14-10 lead?
Not really. I wasn't that nervous. I don't know. But I also knew, like, after I booked it, like, I guess nerves weren't really a thing because when you book a flight, if you can cancel within 24 hours.
That's true.
So I was just kind of like, I want to book this right now, and if I need to cancel it, I can cancel it. But I'd rather book it right now and not have to worry about things. So yeah, that was basically my Game 3 experience. Was okay. They're up 14, or they scored 14 runs, and all of a sudden, wham bam, thank you, ma'am. We're getting on a plane. So, yeah. And then we navigated the NCAA yesterday, and by that I mean the NCAA sent out the wrong link for the hotel booking site. So we got that taken care of. I'm sure that I think I was the first person to notify the media hotel that the link was not correct in that email, but I'm sure I won't be the last. So this is what it is. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of just, that game was kind of over before it started. That's how it felt. So, I was, even as, Florida State was making a bit of a comeback, I was like, I just don't see this happening. So, I guess I wasn't, once we got past the 3rd inning, I was not so focused on what was going on in the field of play, because I needed to focus on other things. So, yeah.
So let's talk about the offensive firepower of this team.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Beavers win Game 1 5-4. They come back after trailing 4-1 going into the bottom of the 9th, score 3 runs to tie it win it in the 10th. They drop game 2. Florida State tacks on a couple runs late, and then they win game 3 14-10 and score all 14 of their runs in the first 4 innings of the game. The Beavers scored 20 runs in the 3 games against Florida State. 16 of those runs came in 3 innings. 3 of the 27 innings produced 16 of their 20 runs.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable, but speaks to the explosiveness of this team, and was something that Mitch Canham talked about after game 1, which is that they just have a ton of confidence that they can, score a lot of runs in any one inning. And we've seen that. But maybe a little bit of a boom or bust weekend for the Beavers. Enough boom to get through. You could credibly make the argument that the Beavers should not be moving on, that they should have been swept, that they were a highly unlikely and improbable comeback in game 1, because they didn't just come back from 4-1 in the 9th inning. They trailed 4-1 with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th inning, and Jacob Craig up to bat. Wild pitch. Wilson Weber comes in and scores, and then Jacob Craig hits a 2-out, 2-strike single to tie the game. Statistically, ridiculous.
Yeah.
That played out that way. I mean, even the wild pitch, right? I mean, if Jacob Craig hits that single with the bases loaded, two runs score, and now it's runners on the corners with 2 outs, and Easton Talt up, and he again, this all is all very butterfly effect, but he ended up flying out. So a lot of reasons that the Beavers probably shouldn't have stolen game 1, but I mean, a huge credit to them that they did. And game 2, I mean, they're up against Florida State's ace. They did a good job of hanging with him. They scored early. They get to the bullpen, end up losing anyway. So the fact that the Beavers even got it to game 3 was really impressive.
Yeah.
But the way they did it on Sunday, I mean, you said it was over before it started, and it certainly felt that way by the 3rd inning. But remember, the Beavers go down 2-0.
Yep.
In the top of the 1st.
And it was not a pretty first inning. It was like, oh.
No, and you're wondering, hey, does DeCramer had gotten his 2nd start of the year in the regional final against USC. Is he going to be able to match that, that performance against Florida State, which is a different kind of animal? And then he obviously got enough run support that it didn't really matter, but he pitched well. So I just thought it was a really a really impressive weekend for the Beavers, top to bottom. They won in different ways, just like they did against, in the regional, where there was some small ball. There was, they had some success bunting in the first game, and then just they mashed in game 3. They have 4 homers in that game, in the first 4 innings, including a grand slam by Trent Carraway. So, obviously, offensive firepower is not the Beavers' issue going into Omaha.
No, not at all. I want to hear more about your experience in game 3, because you did something that I thought was really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Well, it became like you, right? So rather than book my flight to Omaha, I was sitting there staring at a blank screen saying, what do you say about the Beavers when they're up 14-4? Well, and they weren't up 14-4. I think they're up 7-2 when I kind of took a walk in the 2nd or 3rd inning, just because it was looking like such a rout so early on.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite know what I was looking for, but I had, watching in the regional and watching Oregon State baseball over the years, knew that there were fans who, posted up at the top of the parking garage, the OSU parking garage across Washington Street from Goss Stadium, and went for a little walk, stepped outside the stadium. And yep, sure enough, there were a few heads poked up there in the 2nd inning. Went up there and met some students who were, that was how they were taking in the game. It wasn't as expensive to get into game 3 as it had been for game 2. Like, ticket prices for game 2 on the Saturday night were insane.
Oh, really?
Game 3, I think you could still get into like the GA seats for like $50. But nonetheless, I mean, there were people up there, and so that's who I hung out with for parts of the game. I went up there. maybe the third and fourth innings, and then I came back and I went back up there in the eighth to see kind of the scene at the end of the game. And a couple things that stood out. There were some students up there listening to the game on the car radio, which like I thought was like very sweet and felt like kind of like, very,
old school
childhood thing to do. Like you can see a part of the game, because like from the parking garage you can't see the whole field. You can see the entire outfield. You can see the left side of the infield. You cannot see home plate. You can't see the batter. You can't see the pitcher. You can't see first base. And so I see there's these students. They're all drinking Michelob Ultras and Coors Lights, listening to the game through the car windows that are open. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't Mike Parker. This isn't even like really live. And they're like, yeah, we're streaming it on AirPlay or CarPlay. And so it's like a little bit delayed. It's like 15 seconds delayed. I'm like, why don't you just turn on the radio? And they were like, oh, I didn't think of that. And like, it was so funny. This one dude, Chance Summers, whose dad Chris pitched for OSU in the early 90s, was like, you got to understand, like, we're all CarPlay or Spotify. So I had to like tell them, like, turn it to 1280 KJO and you can listen to Mike Parker, the voice of the Beavers. So they did that. They got that cranked up. I thought that was very funny that I had to teach 20-somethings about terrestrial radio.
That's amazing.
You couldn't see, obviously, like I said, the batter. They have those tents like down the right field line, kind of by the foul pole, and they're these peaked tents, and so you can't see the batter, but you could hear the crack of the bat. You could hear the reaction of the fans, and when Trent Carraway and Gavin Turley hit those 2 homers in the fourth, bases loaded, and you're like, oh, the Beavers going to push a couple more across. Like, I didn't know who was up. I didn't know how those guys had gotten on base. Like, you're not really making out what's happening in the game. You're kind of following the very broad strokes from that distance. And then you hear the crack of the bat, you hear the crowd, and then you see the ball carry. And so Carraway, just hit an absolute bomb for the grand slam. And then a couple batters later, it's Turley's turn. And those dudes up on the parking garage were going crazy. They were like, holy shit, again, oh my God, this is amazing. Which I'm sure is every Beaver fan's reaction, but like, I just really appreciated the commitment of the fans who they want. It was better to see 70% of the game in person than to be sitting on the couch in the air conditioning, watching it on TV in Corvallis. Like that desire to have a real-time view of history unfolding, because making it to Omaha, even for a program that's done it as many times as the Beavers have now, for all the reasons we laid out at the top, is so meaningful for Mitch Canham, meaningful for students at Oregon State, meaningful for members of the community. And by the 9th inning, so when I went up there in the second or third inning, there were not 10 people up there, maybe 8 or 9, like a pretty the small crowd. And one of the guys who was up there was like, I was here yesterday, there were 50 people and they were grilling and they had tents and there was like much more of like a party up there. When I went back in the 8th inning, it had multiplied. There were 40 people up there.
Nice.
And it was really cool to be there when Nelson Keljo had that final strikeout. You couldn't see it. You couldn't see the pitch. But what you saw was like you saw the pitch, you heard the crowd, and then you could see Keljo in front of the pitcher's mound because he kind of moved toward the plate, and he punched the air and he kicked, and then I later realized he threw his glove. I couldn't make that out from that distance, but it was a really cool way to watch a sports moment happen. Like, it would be a terrible way to watch a game and try to cover a game as a reporter, but to spend it with those diehards in that scene was really cool, and something I'll remember, and I know they will too. I mean, to be able to say like, hey, when the Beavers went to Omaha, I had this God's eye view from 700 feet away. I think is really cool. And one of the unique things about the setup at Goss and in Corvallis, I've had a few people reach out, kind of say like, hey, like, where else can you do this in sports? Like, you've got the Wrigley rooftops. One of my buddies who grew up in Oakland talked about like peeking through the fence to watch A's games when he was a kid, and security wouldn't like shoo them away. Obviously, if you're at the Mac Club, if you're at the Mac at Providence, you can watch a Timbers or Thorns game. But there is something that's very much like a throwback to the idea of being able to, steal a view of a game when you can't otherwise get in.
Yeah, I would definitely say that this parking garage version is much more pure than the Mac Club version. Sorry, Mac Club.
Naturally, yes. Yes. It's much cheaper to buy a ticket to a Timbers game than a membership to the Multnomah Athletic Club.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lifetime tickets to the Timbers. I guess that's the thing with a Mac membership is you are essentially getting lifetime tickets to the Timbers too. So there's that.
I'm sure there's some sort of process too for who gets out on that balcony and how that all works, because obviously you can't have all of your Mac Club members on the balcony.
Brenna, don't lie. Don't pretend like you don't know. You're
a
member at the Mac.
No, I was not.
Member. You grew up going to all the camps there.
No,
you go to the gym at the Mac and you hobnob with all the power brokers in Portland.
You're like tapping into insecure middle school Brenna right now, like you wouldn't believe. Which I have no reason, by the way, to say that, because not like I didn't I'll just be frank. I definitely grew up in some privileged spaces, okay, but my parents were not members of the Mac Club. We were members of the Oswego Lake Country Club. Yay, same difference. What? Sorry.
Oh, I said, was Club Sport there yet before it became?
We were not a part of Club Sport either. Yeah.
What was it called before it was Club Sport? It was something else, right?
Oh, man.
Or was it Club Sport?
I don't remember, but you're totally right. It was something else.
Okay. Kidding about the Mac. Although, Mac members tap in, let us know. We'll discuss this on next week's podcast. What is the process of getting the choice seats at the Mac to watch a Timbers game?
Yes. But I couldn't get a ticket to a Mac Club dance to save my life in middle school, and that was like primo real estate. I finally got one. I got one ever, and I went, and it was fine.
I had no such difficulties getting a membership to the Tillamook YMCA.
Oh, wow.
When I was in middle school.
Yes. Well,
there was a sauna at the Tillamook YMCA, which in hindsight, I don't know. It doesn't seem that sanitary.
Yeah, but it was funny. I ran into a classmate of mine at an Oregon State game because he works for the 49ers as a scout. And there was somebody else in my grade who was getting married that weekend. And I was like, I'm surprised you aren't at this one wedding. And he was like, well, what's funny is I was back at the Mac Club working out and I ran into everybody who was going to the wedding. And I was like, oh my God, that is just too much. Anyways, back to the topic at hand.
Speaking of the Mac, I'm kidding. I don't think there's any Mid-American Conference teams in the College World Series, but that would have been an amazing transition if
that
it could
would have been a great one.
Like Ohio's not in, Kent State's not in.
I don't believe
Coastal
Murray
Carolina
State is a part of the
Mac.
MAC. That would be our one hope.
What's Murray State's not in the MAC? They've got to be in the Sun Belt, right?
Yeah. Let's you know what? Let's find out in real time.
You're gonna fire up the Google machine right now
on
the podcast?
File up the Google machine on the podcast.
Do we need producer Kelly Doyle to insert some sort of Jeopardy music here? Obviously not the real Jeopardy music.
The Ohio Valley Conference. God, we're so close.
That would be the Oregon Valley Club, the OVC. Not quite, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Crazy College World Series field. When you look at the teams that are in the field, and we're going to talk about why I think the Beavers have a real chance here.
They have a real chance.
In addition to the fact that this is a dang good Beaver team, but let's just go through it real quick.
Yes.
So you have in bracket 1, which is the Beavers, you've got Coastal Carolina, Arizona, which won the Eugene Regional and powered through to beat North Carolina, which stunned everybody.
Yes.
Oregon State and Louisville. In bracket 2, which is the other side, and will produce the other side of the championship series, you have UCLA, Murray State, Arkansas, LSU. So your national seeds in this tournament are Arkansas and LSU are 3 and 6. They'll play each other on Saturday. Oregon State's number 8. Coastal Carolina is number 13. UCLA is number 15. And by the way, it is notable that Oregon State and Coastal Carolina are the only two national seeds in bracket 1, and the other 3 are all in bracket 2. So Arkansas and LSU and UCLA are going to take care of each other.
Yep.
So from a on paper national seed threat, the Beavers really only need to worry about Coastal Carolina. Now, that is obviously not true because Louisville and Arizona earned their spots in the College World Series. Mm-hmm. But we have to note that Louisville got through the Vanderbilt regional. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about Louisville baseball, right? But I can look at its schedule. I can read a bracket. And they get through the Vanderbilt regional. Vandy's number 1 in the country. Louisville does beat Vandy in that regional. But they're not the team that knocked out Louisville. That was Wright State.
Yeah.
So Louisville gets I know it's
Louisville.
I've spent a lot of time drinking Kentucky bourbon, and enough that I went to Louisville for on a bourbon drinking trip. I'm not going to call it bourbon tasting. It was a bourbon drinking trip. And I love the shirt they sell where it's like, it basically says progressively, the more bourbon you drink, the more like slurred Louisville becomes. Louisville. Pretty soon you're saying Louisville. So we'll start at Louisville and we'll work our way down to Louisville. But I know that Louisville was given a gift by needing to beat Wright State to get out of that region. Instead of Vanderbilt. So I'm not calling it a free pass, but that is a gift that, not a lot of teams are afforded when they're going into the region of the number 1 team in the country. Now, beating Miami in the super regional, a little bit more impressive in 3 games. Although, those were, with the exception of Louisville had one. Louisville it's like the brewery Level, like Level Brewing. Not yet a sponsor of this podcast, but could be. Did have an 8-1 win in that series, but otherwise those games were really close. So again, I don't know anything about Lil baseball, but I just based on the limited things I know and then the amount I do know about Oregon State, I feel good about the Beavers in game 1 against the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. So we can enunciate Cardinals. That's allowed.
I forget. I think the Gonzaga women were playing Louisville in a NCAA tournament game, and I had to go through very specifically with one of our sports anchors, and I was like, "It is not Louisville."
I mean, it's like Louisville. That's like an all-time mispronunciation series or like game.
Yeah,
it's like you just know the national broadcasters are like, it's Gonzaga. The broadcasters actually aren't the problem. I take it back. It's not the national broadcasters because they've generally
sometimes
been
it is.
But it's Gonzaga. What did they even say? Gonzaga?
Yeah, it's Gonzaga.
That's so. I can't even say Gonzaga. It's so like.
Well,
it's so wrong.
The thing
that's like saying Nevada. Ugh.
Yeah, well, a lot of people do that too. And that's why I have kind of a bee in my bonnet about mispronunciation, about that sort of thing, and why I was so into Louisville. But I will say this. I'll admit
Gonzaga versus Louisville.
There is a Gonzaga prep on the East Coast, and that is how they pronounce it.
Really, the one in DC, right?
Yep, the one in DC.
I did not know. So I'm familiar with it from being a living person who comes across these things. I did not know it was pronounced Gonzaga.
That is why so many East Coast people struggle with it.
Then why did they? But okay, then why, is it because of like Oregon, Wisconsin that they call Oregon? Like, I struggle with this. Like, we're going to tell you how it's pronounced, and then you're going to pronounce it that way.
Yeah,
and yet it doesn't seem to work that way.
No, it doesn't. I should not get started on this. We're really going down some Brenna bugaboos at this podcast. No, I mean the bracket definitely looks friendly to OSU. That's for sure. They have had some, that the Arizona game at the Pac-12 tournament a few years ago definitely stands out to me as one of those games where you're like, how did that happen?
Yep.
Where they lost 13-12. And they should have won that game.
Yep.
But I mean, you have somebody that you're familiar with. They've won 5 of the last 7 against Arizona. And then you have, a Coastal Carolina team that is no longer Cinderella.
Right. One did win the College World Series in 2016. This is their third World Series appearance.
Was it 2016?
Excuse me, their second. This is their second World Series appearance.
I thought it was 2014.
2016.
Okay, must have been.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe they did something. I have a very distinct memory of them related to Montana, so that's why I was like, I thought it was 2014. But anyway,
Chanticleers.
Yes.
Great color scheme, by the way, Coastal.
Oh, excellent.
Teal, bronze, and black. I mean, if I ever found a college, if there is ever an Oram University, I might steal their color scheme. Looks great on the uniforms. So I mean, listen, it's a tournament. Anything can happen. We've learned that from the Beavers so far. I would even go so far as to say that the Beavers have struggled getting started in each round.
Very boom or bust for them.
They, obviously they lost to St. Mary's in the first game of the regional before getting going. And then they, as we've established, should have lost to FSU in the first game of the Super Regional.
Yep.
So, I'm not going to rule out anything here, and I'm not trying to predict the future. That's pretty hard to do. But, like we've said, it lines up nicely for the Beavers. Bracket 2 is certainly where the more heavy hitters live. Brenna, have you spent any time contemplating the potential of a rematch in the championship series between Oregon State and Arkansas? The Razorbacks.
I haven't like really gone down that road, if that makes sense, but I do have like very visceral memories of that series.
Sure.
So, it would be pretty cool for me personally if it ended up that way. I'll just say that. So, he's looking at me like, "What do you mean?" I've talked about this a little bit on social media, nothing crazy, but my great grandpa played baseball at OSU.
Okay.
So was
he on the 1952 World Series team?
No way. My grandma was born in 1954. So wait, no, my mom was born in 1954.
What year? So what years did your great grandpa play baseball at OSU?
I'd have to ask around to
like
get
the 30s.
That info. That would check out. Probably earlier than that.
Wow. Okay.
Probably 20s. Yeah. Okay. So anyways, this is we're really going down the Brenna rabbit hole today. So 2018,
our
I was
moms
living.
Were born the same year.
I was living in Reno, Nevada. And I was about to move to Spokane. I was a month away or so from moving to Spokane. And not even a month, actually. It was probably a few weeks. And I was on my way to my grandma's house because my grandma lives in the middle of nowhere, Oregon. It's called Lakeview, in case you've heard of it. Technically the tallest town in Oregon. So there you go. There's your one claim to fame.
Hold on. Time out.
Yeah.
You said it's the tallest town in Oregon?
I think that's what they say. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like it's like got the highest elevation.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Interesting.
Their mascot's a honker, which I think is incredible.
It's great. One of the 3 best Oregon high school mascots. I'll let you finish, but then we're going to come back and rank these because I have thoughts.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well,
I do.
Not to clown my mother, but the cheerleaders there were known as honkerettes. So she was a honkerette in high school.
Bet they don't call them that anymore.
Don't think so. Let me tell you, my dad had a great time letting me know throughout my time as a child that my mother was a honkerette. Anyways, I was driving there because ironically, Reno is the closest I ever lived to my grandmother. It's 4 hours away from Lakeview instead of 6.5, 7, from here.
That's so funny, but yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I lived essentially 2 states away because I had to cross through California to get to my grandmother, and I was still closer. And as I was going to Lakeview, I was driving actually through an area of California. I think it was California. And all of a sudden there was a just massive fire. And so I ended up having to help my station out and report on a fire for them. That ended up getting put out finally. But as I was driving, welcome to this job. And so I helped them report from this fire. And so as this reporting of the fire is going on, Oregon State is playing Arkansas in game 2. There is little to no service. I get in the car. We're in the bottom of the 9th. I'm like, man, I'm really bummed. I missed this game with my grandma. Oregon State's going to lose. And I really wanted to watch at least one game of this series with her. Well, as I'm following along on the ESPN, Gamecast, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what? And they won, as we all know, and then I got to go to Lakeview, and they won game 3, and I got to be with my grandma for game 3. So there you go. Awesome. There's Brenna's story time.
That is awesome. I also remember watching it. I was living in LA and obviously was keeping an eye on my home state's power team, and not nearly the same personal experience, but my God. And that came up again this week because I wrote about kind of the magic of baseball and how, like in life, baseball affords you have a chance until the final pitch is thrown, right? Like more so than any other sport. And we know sports love their metaphors for life. But how many times have you heard in baseball, hey, as long as you have a strike left, you have a chance? And the Beavers had a strike left and they had a chance and they won the dang game. And it makes you think about that game against Arkansas and how the Beavers came down to their final out. And all that needed to happen was catch that foul ball. Arkansas, congratulations on the College World Series. And they cracked the door open ever so slightly, and the Beavers burst through it, just like they did on Friday against Florida State. So this is a baseball program that has shown that all it needs is a glimmer of hope to take advantage. I feel like we've probably talked about this on this podcast before, but I love high school mascots, and I think that Oregon has some of the very, very best.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I think Oregon has some good ones, but the number one state is the one that you are currently wearing on your head.
I mean, yes, I agree. Go ahead.
I mean, you can't beat the Chinook Sugar Beaters.
When I covered
Montana, by the way, for those who are listening and don't know what we're talking about.
When I was in Utah,
there
is the it's the Jordan Beet Diggers.
Nice.
The Beet Diggers are good. Obviously, you have the Paper Makers up north. But man, okay, so I strongly believe that the Honkers are one of the 2 or 3 best in the state of Oregon.
Do you want me to buy you some honker gear when I go down there?
Maybe. I do. Actually, it's not even a maybe. Yes, I do.
Okay, I can do that for you.
And I will return the favor by picking up something from the Cheesemakers of Tillamook.
Excellent.
For you.
We will do a pod swap.
The Cheesemakers, the Honkers, anything that is like truly local and truly unique, I think it cannot be beaten. Like I went to high school, our mascot at Neseka High is the Bobcats. Like how many high schools around the country do you think have a mascot of the Bobcats? 1,000?
1,000,000.
2,000? 3 million? Like, I mean, those are the ones that I love. Not the Bobcats, the Cheesemakers, the Paper Makers, the Sugar Beaters, the Beet Diggers. I can't remember the other ones that are in Utah, but there's other good ones there too. And of course the Honkers. But when you look around the state, I mean, okay, the Black Tornado, Like that old Chris Ledoux song, You'll ride a black tornado across the western sky. Come on. Good job, North Medford.
Yeah. I like that.
The White Buffaloes of Madras.
May I submit one from my past?
You may.
The Aardvarks.
Excellent. That is a good one. OES, for those who
literally
do not know.
Started that mascot as a joke.
Is that true?
That is true.
What's the origin story there? Regale us.
The origin story is that the school didn't have a mascot, I believe. This is what I was passed. This is the lore that was passed down to me over the years. The school, so who knows? It could be wrong. The school didn't have a mascot. The students decided to make it up as a joke that they were the OES Aardvarks, and then it just stuck, and the school said, I guess that's our mascot now.
And then the other one in the state that I would give, the Aardvarks is very good. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Yeah.
I would absolutely include the Lava Bears of Bend on the
list. That's a good one, yeah.
And like there's just other good ones. I mean, the Grant Union Prospectors, I'm looking at them now, so I'm getting a few of these like triggered for me. The Prospectors, the Ochres, obviously the Seagulls of Seaside. There's good ones. There's good ones. But if I had to go, I don't know what's third, but I feel pretty strongly that Tillamook and Lakeview are numbers 1 and 2.
Yeah. That's fair. That's totally fair. I just would like to say, the pound for pound mascot, the mascot situation on Montana's High Line, which most people have not even heard of before, it is the murderer's row of high school mascots up there. An incredible lineup. I mean, you've got the Glasgow Scotties. Amazing.
Got the Tiger Scots here at Weston McEwen, but keep going.
I mean, I'm partial to a Scotty dog.
Sure.
And also, they have a giant metal Scotty dog mascot or statue at their school, which is pretty awesome. You've got the Chinook Sugar Beaters, like I said. You have the Havre Blue Ponies, which are named after the ponies that come out of mines.
Shout out
and
Ryan
nobody
Divish.
there really knows the exact story of how they became the Blue Ponies. Like, there's no, like, agreed upon, this is how we became the Blue Ponies, which is amazing. Nobody really knows. You have RIP no longer exists because schools have come together now, and schools have to co-op to make things work in terms of numbers for athletics. So they have to come together, create these, like, it's like 3 high schools that are come together for one and tiny, like 1A school essentially here, to make things happen. And so because of that, they went with completely new mascots, unfortunately. So, like, Whitewater, which is a town on the High Line, used to be the Whitewater Penguins. Incredible. Okay, there's a few others up there that are like from back in the day that were pretty great that no longer exist. But yeah, that's my mascot nirvana is Montana's High Line. So
why would you not have the names of the mascots on here, you dweebs? A couple more from Utah that I was just reminded of. The Dixie Flyers in St. George, and obviously the Dixie portion is problematic, but if you're going to be Dixie, you might as well be the Dixie Flyers, and the Carbon Dinos, due to some archaeological finds in that area. The Carbon Dinos,
nice,
is another good one. Brenna, by the time we get back from Omaha, you're going this week. I am going to be joining you a little bit later on in the tournament. The Blazers will be much closer to the draft. They'll be days away from the draft. Blazers have been busy. They've been having players in for workouts. It's interesting. It feels like they're mostly still kind of, we've only seen a handful of players, I think, who are really in play in that number 11 spot. Asa Newell's a guy who's been here from Georgia. The guy I want to talk about, though, is our guy, Cedric Coward. And you might be wondering why I'm saying our guy, Cedric Coward, because he played at Washington State and Eastern Washington, and he's from Northern California. Brenna, did you know that he started his career at Willamette University?
I did know that. I
found that out a few weeks ago and was gobsmacked because I didn't know it. I didn't know that when he was at Eastern and at Wazoo. And talk about an outrageous ascent from the lowest level of NCAA basketball.
Yep.
I wrote about Cedric Coward in the Oregonian this week. This is a guy who was barely recruited out of high school. Willamette gets their eyes on him, and their attitude is basically like, hey, how is this guy still available, and how do we keep him under wraps? Because if anybody finds him, we'll lose him. Did not play AAU basketball, wasn't on a travel team. So people weren't getting out and seeing him at the level, in the places where typically a lot of that recruiting is happening. Comes to Willamette, is the Northwest Conference Freshman of the Year while paying $25,000 a year to go to college. Even after financial aid and academic scholarships, he was a really good student. Had a 3.8 GPA out of high school, which is how he's going to Willamette and getting, and getting scholarships anyway. Now he's going to be a lottery pick in the NBA draft. Maybe, probably. Definitely a first rounder. Yep. Was set to get a huge NIL package from Duke. Was decided to forego to enter the NBA draft. Completely understandable. But it is an amazing and uniquely 2025 college basketball story where you've got a guy who not only was way better than the level he was playing at and was able to transfer and get on the national radar, transferred twice, was about to transfer 3 times, and is foregoing a huge payday from Duke for presumably an even bigger payday in the NBA. If you look at mock drafts, he's falling anywhere from number 10 to the mid 20s. But, after the college basketball season, I think, obviously he committed to Duke, was a guy that people saw, hey, maybe this is a second round talent. And then he starts creeping into the first round, has an amazing combine, and now is seen as a real credible, guy to sneak into the lottery, which is the top 14 picks. And you could make a case that there's an argument for him to be the guy the Blazers take. I mean, the skill set that he has, two-way player, kind of some point guard skills, defender, shooting the ball really, really, really well. Only played 6 games at Washington State last year due to a shoulder injury. But, what David Riley, the Washington State coach, who also had him at Eastern Washington, told me was, hey, he was in for a huge year, and the teams that wanted to see him early in the year saw what they needed to see to understand what kind of player he is. A 6'6" wing who shoots it and plays defense. Look at the NBA Finals. You can't have too many of those guys, and that is kind of how the Blazers have built their team with Denny Advia and Shaedon Sharpe and Toumani Camara. You can play 5 of those guys at once. And I think that, if the Blazers think he's the best 3-and-D guy there, there's a case for that to be the kind of player they choose. So I think that's pretty intriguing, and also just a really cool story. A really cool story that a kid could start his career at the 1,100 student campus on, in the shadow of the Oregon State Capitol, doing defensive slides over the Sky Bridge on campus because he was late to a practice and overslept, and could be, making $6 million in the NBA next year. Really cool.
Willamette University, where I was once the bump camp champion. There you go.
See, all great basketball origin stories involve Willamette University.
That's
bump camp. Is bump camp what I think it is?
No, like the
You're not
like,
playing knockout, like the free throw game?
Knockout. Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's what I meant. Like, basketball.
Yep.
That's great. That's great.
Still have the trophy.
That's, what? Here's what I want. Here's what I want to have happen, because Cedric Coward will work out for the Blazers at some point. Yeah. Unless for some reason he ends up with a guarantee higher than 11, which feels a little unlikely, although
or they just do Houston. A secret workout with him.
Sure. Totally. Or they go see him work out somewhere else. I mean, his agency could do a workout, somewhere else where teams come in. But I mean, generally you would expect that he'll come in and work out in Tualatin. If he does, and when he does, I want you to bring your bump camp from Willamette trophy, and I want you to do a one-on-one interview with Cedric Coward and talk about how you both got your start as basketball stars at Willamette. Will you do this?
No, I have self-respect. Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to tell you how to be a TV personality. I'm not Dan Dockich, but
wow, that's so funny. That's the second time that's been brought up this week.
But a throwback for those who know. IYK.
Yeah.
But you got to commit to the bit. And if if I went to Willamette, which I didn't. Did I apply to Willamette? No, I didn't. I was going to apply to Willamette. Apply to Willamette, but I didn't at the last minute. But if I'd gone to Willamette, I would absolutely use that when Cedric Coward came to work out for the Blazers. You didn't go to Willamette, but you left a legacy on that campus all the same. And I think that you need to use this when he comes to Tualatin.
I think I might have. I have another trophy from it, and I don't remember what the other trophy is for. It might be defensive player of the camp or something like that, or hustle player.
I mean, Cedric Coward will respect that. If you're listening to this podcast,
doesn't say
reach
it
out to
doesn't say it on the trophy, unfortunately. Yeah, it's just a generic trophy of a girl playing basketball. So I could be claiming something that's not true, but the knockout thing is true.
I think that this is. If you don't do it, I will. I will show up.
Well, I might not be there.
That's so true. It really needs to be tomorrow. No, you're leaving tomorrow. It needs to be today. I'm going to call the Blazers and say, can we set up a workout for this evening with Cedric Coward so I can get Brenna to commit to the bit that we dreamt up on the Oregonian Sports Podcast, OSP. Why have we not called this OSP all along? Would we get sued by the state police?
I was going to say, there's an acronym. Oh, yeah, that's the acronym.
OSP is coming for you tomorrow at 8 a.m. No, probably not.
This has been a sufficiently off the rails podcast for us, I feel like. But,
even by our standards,
it's June. So this is what happens in mid-June when we're waiting for baseball games to start and for the NBA draft to happen. And I'm sure we'll have more tangible things to talk about next week. But for right now, we're talking about how I was the knockout champion at a basketball camp at Willamette.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, where we learn a little bit more about Brenna's free throw shooting prowess. I mean, I assume you were making the free throws, or were you just playing full on knockout and then making the layup? Because we're talking knockout where you you can hit the opponent's ball with your ball. So maybe I was
not a particularly dirty bruiser. Knockout player.
Okay, so you're like Steve Nash.
We might have ended up putting it. It might have ended up getting extended to the 3-point line though for the last few rounds. So, yeah.
Degree of difficulty increase. Love
yes. That. I seem to have a faint memory of that. But yeah, I don't really remember much about it. I just remember winning and being like, I just won this? What? Because I was an average at best shooter. I don't know how I pulled that one off. That was luck. Anywho, yeah. To harken back to a reference a few minutes ago, your favorite little DEI hairspray signing off for the podcast.
That was it.
If people don't know, search it, baby, on Twitter.
Just don't even. All right, Brenna, have a safe trip out to Omaha. I'll see you there in a week or so, assuming the Beavs. There's no assuming in baseball, but if the Beavs keep it going, I'll join you out there and see you next week.
We'll have to have a rumsa? Is that what it is? The delicacy
is that an Omaha
of the
thing?
Midwest? It's is it like a pierogi?
What?
I don't really know, but somebody told me. I was texting somebody yesterday, and they said, you need to, a runza.
I've been to Omaha once. I was driving across the country to go to an internship at the Washington Post in 2009 with my dad. We were driving from... Am I remembering this correctly? Well, we were definitely driving across the country. Oh, we were on our way to New Jersey first to visit my grandmother, who was still living at the time. And we missed the turn to go east into, what's that, Kansas maybe? Or maybe into Iowa? Yeah. And so we just kept tooling along on the interstate, and all of a sudden we see these really tall buildings, and we see a major city in front of us, and the sign says, "Welcome to Omaha." And we were like, we were supposed to turn off 50 miles ago.
That is such a beautiful relic of a lost time.
Yeah. You know what else is a beautiful relic of a lost time, since we're off the rails?
Yeah.
I've never watched The Sopranos, which will come as a shock to some people. But Joe Freeman was talking about it this weekend. My colleague Joe Freeman with the Oregonian was talking about the show this weekend while we were covering Oregon State baseball. And I was like, I really need to go back and watch The Sopranos. So for the second or third time in my life, I watched the pilot of The Sopranos. And very early on in the pilot, Tony Soprano runs a guy over with his car.
Yes.
Breaks his leg, hops out, and then starts beating on the guy's broken leg, compound fracture. And there's this crowd of people standing around watching this happen. 1999, right? Not a cell phone in sight. It was so weird to watch that all these people are standing around watching, and they have no way to visually document what's happening. And it made me realize it must have been so much easier to be a mob boss before cell phones, or just a,
bad person,
a criminal in general. Yeah, bad person. Which I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing that it was easier to brazenly beat people in the sunshine in the middle of the day. But it was very strange to watch because it felt like such a relic of that time. Just like the days when you used an atlas and not a smartphone. So just two examples of how smartphones have changed our lives. Brenna will be using her smartphone tomorrow morning for her alarm clock very early, for the GPS to get to the airport, and to check in for her flight using the airline app, and then probably also to connect to the internet on her plane so she can watch.
Oh,
shows.
I will be if I'm on that plane. Yeah, there's no doubt. It's a 5:40 takeoff. I will be sleeping as soon as I can, even though I really stink at sleeping on airplanes. But
all right, well, we'll look forward to hearing about that next week on the Oregonian Sports Podcast. Will Brenna still be in Omaha?
Yeah, we'll see.
Or will she be back covering draft workouts with the Blazers? We'll find out. Thank you for listening. Tell your friends. Subscribe. Rate. Read the Oregonian. Watch Coin 6. And watch the Beavers this weekend, and we'll talk about it next week. Thanks for listening.